All right, so score number 6. We are about a third of the way through our 18 scores here. Score number 6 is really an excellent bit of scoring by Craig, and I just, once again, just really enjoyed listening to it. I thought there were some really cool ideas, and it's just about ready to sit on the stands, I would say, right? It could be handed to a copyist. Now, there are going to be a few errors in harmony that you'll notice here and there. Some places where the harmony from the bar ahead of it actually got stuck on the bar before it. So, just some minor errors like that. And there are a couple of places where I would adjust a little bit of the balance and possibly substitute an instrument here and there. But I think on the whole, this interpretation really holds together and is just a fun bit of scoring and very effective as well. So let's have a listen to it. So, after listening to that, you can really hear that Craig, spent a good deal of time on his mock-up and, just really making sure that everything sounded great. And there was also a great deal of attention to different things like, scrape suspended cymbal with triangle beater, just little touches like that where, Craig is using different effects in different ways. Yeah, and, soli, atu, adu, he's thinking about how all of these things are going to come across. Now, like I said, there are a couple little suggestions about balance, and there are one or two proofreading errors, and so on. So let's jump into it, shall we? And I'll just, excuse me for fiddling with the page size on this quite a bit, but I just really... it's such a huge score that I really want to make sure that the staff size isn't too small on your screen. Okay, so we start off with kind of an interesting bowing. We actually saw this a score or two ago. Da 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 da. I think that's kind of fun. It's really kind of splitting the difference between the two. The two directions of the bow, and Craig puts a little bit of emphasis right on the beginning of this bow stroke in the flutes. A deux. All right, so look, the thing about it is I feel that just the density of everything here is so, even the fact that everything is marked piano, okay? Well and good, but I just feel that this is not going to provide any audible emphasis. So it might as well be like a clarinet, like second clarinet or first clarinet, okay? Or and then you could like just not dovetail, but you could just go right into this gesture here, right? So it could just be a single clarinet, then pick it up right there. or you could do second clarinet and then first clarinet on this, on taking over this melody, if you want to keep the functions really differentiated. But yeah, just I don't feel that two flutes down there on a low E is going to, it's going to really pop out very much from the texture, or add enough emphasis. So this is kind of cool. This score is in C. So instead of going up to D, Craig went down to C major, right? Which I think is just really fun. Yeah. So anyways, it just gives it a more kind of a slightly darker, slightly richer quality. Yeah. There's something about the key of D flat, which is that it has a slightly bright tone, almost as if everything has been, as if you've taken C major and you've kind of cranked it up slightly. Like I'll change the tuning so everything was a sharp, was like a sharp, like a sharp higher, or it's actually up to D flat, but yeah. So yeah, and a lot of composers liked that tone for its own sake, just because, comparing it to the C major, the C major quality of the way the concert music was going, especially for like pianists and other instruments where things were kind of becoming more simplified. Yeah. But this sort of restores that kind of more kind of graceful, open, lower kind of sound. So well done. And the little touches of timpani are perfect. That's all really nice. Moving on, the clarinet picks up the melody and just doubles, and this is pretty well done. Just giving a little bit of color. You're adding color to the violin line at the same time that you add an octave below, and you have some of the function taken over by bassoon, the rhythmic function that the cellos were doing. Okay, and I think that works really well, especially when you are blending the horns with the violas and seconds. So that makes a beautiful blend, and you've got piano crescendo blending perfectly with pianissimo. Okay, that just is nicely done, and then timpani coming in just to make sure that the emphasis continues, because you've gone to arco here in the double basses. So very cool. All right, now once again, I'm going to adjust the size here just to give you the perfect view of what you can. So just so that the staves don't get too small. Okay, so moving on, we've got the continuation of that idea, the completion of that idea, and yeah, just attention to dynamic detail has been beautiful. Now, I have a beef with this, with your general scoring style of having poco ritardando and a tempo in small italic type. It just is really hard for a conductor to read. It's just tiny, I think this might be a Dorico score, or it doesn't quite look exactly like Sibelius. So I might be mistaken about that. But yeah, look, this should be, the Sibelius default is really, really nice. A tempo in nice big, juicy black type, and same thing with the ritardando line that they've got. It just is really easy to read, and you don't even need the line, but the type there. Okay, but I did like the fact that you are finessing the tempo, and I think that's really cool. Like throwing in poco ritardando going into this next phrase, that was really a cool little touch. Okay, now going ahead, we get to like what I feel is our first big error, or big big thing to fix. Okay, and that is just sticking a phrase over the oboes and sticking a big old phrase over the clarinets. Look, as I've said in other entries, you can add meaning to a score, add new meaning to a line scored onto winds, just by adjusting where the line is tongued and where it isn't, right? So you could come in here and you could go da 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 da, which gives it one kind of feel, right? Or you could go da 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 da, as you know we've seen in other scores. Or you could go da 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 da. You know, I mean, there's just a bunch of different ways that you could add. You know, by adding those little bits of tonguing and slurring, and then maybe adding some dynamic nuances, right? Da 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 da. You know, you give moments of warmth in the line. Okay, so I would say this just needs a little bit of work here, and you know, and I love the fact that you are coming off of it into the clarinet. All you need, you know, follow Rimsky-Korsakov's dictum. All you need is a single note from which to dovetail if you want your dovetail to be seamless. When you have two notes or more, then you hear the tone of both. You know, the fact that you are dovetailing becomes very obvious. It's just like, hey, look, the oboe turned into a clarinet. You know, because you can hear both of them playing for quite a while. That's just kind of what it screams when you are doing that, right? So it's better just to use a single note, and then the color shifts over delightfully to another note, almost imperceptibly. Okay, they're used to doing this with Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky and Ravel all the time. So I would say just, you know, maybe choose this note here, right? Would be better, or even the D. The concert D would be a better note for you to shift over on. Okay. And then the oboes just change to completely oboes and English horn. Second oboe and English horn change over completely to a harmonic function. Now here's where a single flute note can be devastatingly effective. That's very, very nice. You know, kind of throwing it in as the top, this C as the top of the rising pizzicato in the strings. Now this is kind of interesting. Pizzicato for everybody except for the cellos. Yeah, I mean, it does work. But you know, you already have slurs in the bassoon part, so I'm not sure that you need to do slurs in the bassoon part, slurs in the cello, and pizzicato for everybody else. I mean, I guess it works, but I might be a little overkill on the slurring. Okay, and nicely wrapped up as we go into part B. Okay, yeah, and look here, you really worked out the slurring and the tonguing really nicely, right? So what happened here, right? Maybe you didn't get around to it. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't bring that up, but you know, normally not come back to it. But just like this is such an excellently scored work, I'm just wondering why you left that out. So, yeah, so this is neat. Like the little octave thrown in there just for a little bit of color emphasis on the lower line, and it's nice. These little touches keep the part from feeling too static and too predictable, and that's a very nice, very mature touch there, Craig. And then little bits of harp on the downbeat. That's very nice. Yeah, and you've worked out a nice bowing strategy there as well. The bowing here is, you know, nice as I mentioned before. Yeah, so this all works pretty good. Little triangle stroke. Let me shrink this down. Just yet again. Okay. So this was actually pretty cool. The fact that you left off the upper doubling and just had the bassoon play here A2, and that's extremely effective. Very, very nice. And I like the slurred staccato. You know, so you know, that has a nice feeling of expectancy. And here coming in with the horns, or the first horn, having just a little bit of boop boop on there, and then just little enunciations by the trumpet, taking similar to what happened before with the flutes. So yeah, so this is I feel pretty well scored, and just nice dynamics, pretty much. Now here we're getting into a place where I feel it needs a little bit of work. I feel that it is a little oversalted with different dynamics. Think you should just pick a just pick a dynamic and stick with it. Mezzo piano, okay, it's fine. Piano for the brass is fine. And so here you don't need A2 mezzo forte on your clarinets, because this will stand out like this is like getting punched in the face, right? So you have this beautiful, everything here is just nicely done. Then you have A2 clarinets, which have an extremely reedy, somewhat phased sound on the sustain, right? So it's just really adding a lot. This is really cool though. This dun 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 dun. Right? That is just really a nice touch to add that little bit of rhythmic emphasis there, and it just really works great. And and here we've got once again our double octave, this time with cellos and first violins, which is always a very nice color. It has a much chestier quality and then you got your harmony in the middle with second violins and boop boop with the violas. It's just a really well crafted little thing here. I would almost question whether or not you needed bassoon at all here. Because you've got your trombone playing that, but it does make a nice mix. But I wonder maybe if this was like second bassoon just for a minute there, right? So second bassoon and trombone, or you could have the two trombones to try to balance a little bit. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. These are the little kinds of details that you can just sort of, you can agonize over for hours and hours just to get one little part right. English horn coming in to double this. That's all really cool. I do like that a lot. Just giving a little bit more warmth to the line before we do the next jump. Okay, and cool little harp part. So far, you have followed my dictum to not make this into a harp concerto, or just to add the harp part. Feels as if that harp part was added last, and that's great. Okay, so now we're getting more and more timpani. It's building. It's sounding pretty cool. Let's minimize a little bit more here. Okay, and that just basically is doubling the downbeat for the cellos and basses. Nicely, all nicely put together. Flutes and first violin, and then coming in with French horns here. Now, A2 French horns is going to be extremely penetrating, as picking up from the flute. So there is going to be a big jump here in firmness of tone, right? Yeah. Okay, and I see you have this harmony sort of coming in, almost like coming out of nowhere. But, it's... Okay, so oboes, mezzo forte, clarinets coming in on the same notes, mezzo forte. And here, you have a different articulation for this and for this. And I would say, you just sort of... if you're trying to get your oboes to get out of the way imperceptibly, then don't mark them staccato tenuto, right? So this should just be like, just play like an eighth note with no articulation on it, or a quarter note with no articulation, and it will dovetail over. Or if you want to just completely seamless dovetail in on this note right here with the clarinets. Have the clarinets come in here, and then just leave out this bar for the oboes, and then that will be the most seamless of all. So we're building up to forte here, and yeah, I almost feel like you could. I see you're sort of doing a bit of a balancing act here, trying to keep your accompaniment soft. But I think you could go mezzo forte here on your brass. Just do a blanket mezzo forte on the brass and a blanket forte on the strings and the winds, and I think that this would balance fine. Okay, and I don't think you would need to do this quite so much. Yeah, because see, then your harmony is softer than. Yeah, so I would say just leave out this idea, mezzo forte to forte, building in there, and just like say forte for the for both winds and strings, and then just have this be, whatever crescendo you're doing here, just as part of the general crescendo that's happening for everybody. Okay, and you don't even have to mark anything here because you're headed for fortissimo there, right? So just put in your, don't bother with anything, just like forte here, crescendo, and then pick it up here with the next marking of fortissimo. And I think that will balance really, really well, right? And the same thing here is like, you can have this crescendo here. You don't need to mark fortissimo, like say F here, crescendo to here. Don't mark fortissimo. It's coming here. And then we're already forte with everybody else, right? So then just give whoever needs the marking, give them the marking, and then push into your fortissimo. And see, now here, you've taken so many pains to keep the brass in the background, and now they are too big, right? You've got... I'm assuming this is still A2, right? But this should actually be horns 1 and 3, right? If this was A2, right? Because 1 and 2 would be playing octaves, and so would 3 and 4, correct? Right? Because the third horn is the second high player. So yeah, so this should be octaves with and I think like what's nice about being in C major is that this does not have to get too high for the brass. Okay, so is a strong argument, and it keeps some of this high stuff in the winds as well from getting too insanely high. And it's really no big problem for playing lower notes in some of the treble instruments because just a half step down doesn't make any difference. Okay. And it also keeps things more harmonically simple, just like, because there's a couple of double flats and white key flats and other things going on otherwise. So this is kind of cool. You've got your main melody in the strings, in the winds. Main melody, almost the entire wind section is playing the main melody, plus the trombones and the trumpets. And the strings are doing the counter melody in these big Titanic tremolo octaves. So look, you have so much weight on the main melody, right? That you do have to balance this back. You do have to dial this back, right? So if this was all forte and this was mezzo forte, and you should just do the increase to a forte, okay? And that way, if this is mezzo forte A2, right? Then that fits in with blending with the with what's going on here with the flutes descending, right? Okay, so and then going up to a forte here, you will get the massive sound that you want just because everything is in a high position, a very tense position, right? Nice, really, really fun. Excuse me. Really, really cool percussion in here. Yeah, so I feel it needs to balance out a little bit, but it was cool that you didn't use strings on the counter melody. I think it'll work fine. Now, this is just going to be an enormous blast, like especially if these people are playing fortissimo. You could probably just dial this back to one line playing A2, get rid of the have like the first and the third player just play this, and no second and fourth, right? Playing this forte, and that otherwise this is just going to be a huge Wagnerian sound, and you won't be able to hear any of these light touches that you put in other places. Okay, so I just say I think that's too big. Basically A4 on this one thing with very high horns is just going to blast the hell out of everybody else. So, and especially like if you are dovetailing down to this, the clarinets will just sound like like they're whimpering, under the punishment, along with these. But I mean, this is a really beautiful, solid sound with your other instruments. But yeah, I just feel this is just too huge. But otherwise, like then with those little touches, this stuff stands out really nicely. Okay, maybe mezzo forte on this rather than forte. Okay, and this is cool. There's a lot of scoring here that you could have just left. This could have stayed tenor clef right in here. So the first player would probably stay in tenor clef, and then the second player would just get this C sharp, and then they don't have to worry about the rest of the passage. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, there was this one little spot. Okay, I won't worry about it. There were little touches that I noticed when I was taking more time to look this over. I can't remember what I noticed, but that's all right. You're getting lots of different observations. Okay, and this works pretty well. Trading off over to here. Da 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 da. Very placid, very nice. It's a little bit of a repeat of what happened before, though. It's the only thing that I would caution. Yes, sure, this was second violins and cellos, and now it's first and second violins, but the timbre is pretty much the same when you've got doubling with the clarinets, even if it's just a single clarinet. So I'm wondering if you could put a different color in there, like, say, bassoons, maybe, or English horn, just to kind of change things up a little bit. This is neat. This little touch of support by the horn. And this is really cool too. It's like a little aubade of wind players contrasting the strings. Yeah, and this I thought was kind of the keystone to your ending strategy here, and that is to just really allow things to go to a brass chorale. Once again, A4. I mean, it's just really a lot of weight on that, for a delicate section. But it's still like, maybe A2. And here I would say the first and second horns, just so you get the intimacy of the partnership, and just leave out the third and fourth. Okay, and then the trumpet solo coming in after that. Very nice. Okay. And then you have this warm cushion left over from the brass, over which the violas can do their little soli wind down. And this was actually pretty nicely scored, going into this little final passage there, and just adding the harp and the other winds as you do a fermata over the top, and the little roll of timpani, that little thing in the background. Just really nicely done. So I really enjoyed this score, Craig, and I think that it's not quite ready to go to the stands, but pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. So just see if you can get somebody to play it. I mean, I think this could be played by like a semi-pro to regional orchestra pretty well. Maybe even like a good student orchestra at a university could really have a lot of fun with it and make it sound good without too much effort. It's just really scored in really nice, ideal ways for the different instruments, and pretty well worked out. So think about some of those issues that I talked about, and take the score and see what else you can do with it, or just move on to the next thing. So thank you very much for that, and now we are on to score number 7.